I politely declined to let my neighbor's son swim in my private pool. The next day, she broke in and dumped bleach in the water, screaming, "If my child can't swim here, nobody will." When I demanded answers, she smiled coldly, "You think you're better than us." I called 911, but as they arrived, my dog was found motionless near the pool and what they discovered in his mouth. So I'm a 42-year-old woman living in Little Elm, Texas. Been here about 4 years now. I'm divorced, no kids, and I keep to myself. After my divorce was finalized, I put a lot of energy into rebuilding my life. One of the things I always wanted was a private backyard pool. Something peaceful. Something that was just mine. So last year, after saving for a while, I had one put in. In-ground, nothing too flashy, but it was mine. I'd swim every morning, have coffee by the water, listen to the birds, read. It was the first real thing in a long time that made me feel good again. My dog Boomer, a 6-year-old golden retriever, was my only full-time companion. He's gentle, loyal, and follows me everywhere. Always stays in the yard. Never had a problem. A few months ago, a woman named Renee moved into the house behind mine. It was just her and her son, Caleb. I met her briefly when I brought over some brownies as a welcome gesture. She barely even said thanks. The first thing she said was, "You're the one with the pool, right?" That should have been my first warning. She wasn't interested in making friends. She just saw something she wanted. A week after that, she came by my house. I remember the moment clearly. I had just come inside after a morning swim. I was still drying off when she knocked. She didn't even bother with small talk. She said, "So, Caleb saw your pool and he's dying to swim. Would it be okay if he comes over a couple times a week? I'll supervise." I said no. Politely. I smiled and said, "I'm sorry, but I built the pool as a private retreat. I like my privacy." She stared at me. Didn't say a word for a good 5 seconds. Then she gave this cold little laugh and said, "Wow. Okay then." I told her it wasn't anything personal. She just said, "Sure," and walked off. Didn't even wait for a goodbye. I didn't think much of it. Figured she might be annoyed, but she'd get over it. I was wrong. The next day I came back from running a few errands around town. Boomer wasn't at the gate like he usually was. I found the backyard gate wide open. That was already weird, since I always latch it. Boomer was by the pool, barking like crazy. But when I walked closer, I smelled something sharp, like chemicals. The pool water was cloudy, almost white. Like someone had dumped something in it. I leaned over and the bleach smell hit me like a truck. I was still trying to process what I was looking at when I heard her voice from over the fence. "If my kid can't swim there, nobody will." I froze. She did this. She really did it. I walked to the side fence and yelled her name. She didn't answer. I knocked on her back door. When she opened it, she had this smile on her face like she knew exactly what she was doing. "You think you're better than us?" she said, then slammed the door in my face. I was shaking with rage. I called 911 right there in her driveway. When I walked back to the pool to take pictures, I noticed Boomer lying down next to the water. He wasn't barking anymore. He looked like he was asleep, but something felt off. I knelt down and tried to wake him up. His breathing was shallow, and his eyes were closed tight. His stomach looked bloated. I panicked. I picked him up and carried him to the car. Right as I was about to back out, the police pulled up. I told them what happened, and one of the officers said they'd follow me to the emergency vet. The other stayed behind to inspect the scene. At the vet, they rushed Boomer to the back. The tech said it looked like he'd ingested something. I told them about the bleach. They said if he drank any of it, it could be fatal. While they were working on him, they found something lodged in his throat, a chunk of cloth. The vet pulled it out and showed it to the officer. It was a piece of a cleaning glove, the thick kind used for bleach scrubbing. The inside had a faded marker scribble, CH. That's when everything changed. That night, police came to my house and told me that the initials matched the son, Caleb H. I asked how a child that age could be involved. The officer didn't say much, just told me they were looking into it. I didn't sleep that night. Next morning, I found fresh scratch marks around my back door. Not claw marks, tool marks. Like someone had tried to wedge it open with a screwdriver or something. I bought a security camera system that day and installed it before nightfall. 3 nights later, it paid off. Around 2 a.m., the motion alert went off. I opened the app and saw her, Renee, walking into my backyard. She looked right at the camera. Smirked. Gave it the finger. Then walked off. I sent the footage to the police. This time, they came with a warrant. Inside her garage, they found 2 full bottles of bleach, a pile of used gloves, rags, and even bolt cutters. But that wasn't all. They found a box with stolen mail, my mail. Stuff I'd never received. Bills, packages, letters. Some had been opened. And then they found something that made my stomach drop. A photo. Printed off Facebook. My profile picture. Torn in half, with black marker scribbles across my eyes. This wasn't just a grudge. It was obsession. And it was about to get worse. The police took everything they found from her garage, and for a while, I thought that would be enough. I thought Renee would finally be held accountable. But I underestimated just how twisted she really was, and how far she was willing to go to make me pay. 3 days later, I got a visit from CPS. Yes, Child Protective Services. The agent told me someone had filed an anonymous tip saying I was abusing a child in my home. That I was keeping a minor locked inside and exposing him to toxic chemicals. I don't even have kids. I told them that. I showed them my house. No toys. No kids' clothes. Nothing. I showed them my ID. My divorce paperwork. My dog's vet bills. Everything. The agent looked embarrassed but said they still had to do a full report. After they left, I sat on the couch in shock. She was trying to ruin my life. Not just scare me, destroy me. That night I saw her through my window, standing in her yard, smoking a cigarette, staring directly at my house. And then she smiled and waved. Like we were playing some kind of game. The police couldn't arrest her yet. They said they were still building a case. That what they had was suspicious but not enough for a charge. Meanwhile, Boomer was still recovering. He wouldn't eat unless I hand-fed him. He barely moved. His once shiny coat looked dull, and he whimpered every time I left the room. I started having trouble sleeping. I kept a baseball bat by the bed. Locked every window. Checked every door 3 times before going to bed. I didn't feel safe anymore. Then one morning, I found a dead squirrel on my doorstep. At first I thought it was just a random thing. But then I saw the note. Folded under the squirrel's stiff little paw was a piece of paper torn from a spiral notebook. This is what happens when people don't share. I ran inside and called the police again. They sent someone out, but once again, they said there was no proof it came from her. No prints. No camera footage. Just a dead animal and a threat. I felt like I was going crazy. One day, I ran into Caleb while walking Boomer on the sidewalk. The kid looked miserable. Dirty shirt. Bruised arm. He stopped walking when he saw me and said nothing. I gave a small nod and said, "Hey Caleb." He looked around like he was checking if his mom could hear, then whispered, "She said she'd make you disappear too." My blood ran cold. "Too?" I asked. He opened his mouth to say something else, but then bolted. Full sprint down the street and disappeared behind the fence. I tried to report the conversation, but again, no evidence. no way to prove it. I felt helpless. Until the next day. I went out to bring in the trash bins and noticed something shiny on top of the lid. It was a USB drive. No label. Just left sitting right there. I almost didn't pick it up. But something told me I needed to see what was on it. I plugged it into my laptop and opened the folder. There were videos. 4 of them. Each one was security footage. Not from my cameras, from hers. I don't know who left it or how they got the footage, but what I saw made my stomach turn. In the first video, dated a week before the pool incident, Renee was in her backyard with Caleb. She was yelling at him to get it right and make it look like an accident. He looked terrified. In the second video, she was stuffing gloves into a bag. In the third, she walked to the side of my house with a gallon jug and poured it into my pool. You could hear her say, "Let's see how she likes this." But it was the fourth video that hit the hardest. Caleb was crying. Standing by the fence. Renee grabbed him by the arm and screamed, "If you don't do what I say, I'll make you sleep outside again." He nodded, shaking. Then she handed him a pair of scissors and pointed toward my yard. I didn't sleep that night. I watched those videos over and over, hands shaking, rage building with each replay. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. She was abusing her own son, and using him to terrorize me. I wasn't just dealing with a petty neighbor. I was dealing with someone sick. First thing in the morning, I drove straight to the police station with the USB. They took me seriously this time. I could see the officer's expression change as he watched. He paused the video where she said, "Make it look like an accident," and called in someone from the back room. They told me they were going to open a formal investigation. For child endangerment. Trespassing. Criminal mischief. Possibly more, depending on what they could prove from the footage. I thought it would end there. That maybe now she'd get arrested. But that's not what happened. That night, my front window shattered. I was in the kitchen when I heard it. A hard crash, then glass raining across the living room floor. Boomer started barking like crazy. I ran to the window and saw a rock lying on the floor surrounded by shards of glass. Taped to it was another note. Last chance. Sell the house. Leave. I called 911 again. Told them everything. The broken window. The note. The USB footage. They came out, took more pictures, and promised to post a patrol car outside my street overnight. But they still hadn't arrested her. They said they needed to find out who left the USB. That there could be chain of custody issues. Meanwhile, I was living in fear. The next morning, a letter arrived in my mailbox with no return address. Inside was a photo. A photo of Boomer. Taken from inside my backyard. Close up. While I wasn't home. On the back of the photo, in red ink, "Maybe he goes next." I snapped. I couldn't take it anymore. I packed a bag, loaded Boomer into the car, and went to stay with my sister in McKinney, about 30 minutes away. I left my security cameras running, hoping I could catch something if she came back while I was gone. 3 nights later, I got the alert. She was back. The footage showed Renee climbing over my fence, again. This time, she had something in her hand. A small bottle. She knelt by the dog's water bowl and dumped the liquid inside. Then she turned and looked directly at the camera, smiled, and walked away. It was poison. Had I been home, Boomer would have been dead. That was the last straw. But here's where the twist came in. I had an idea. One last thing to try. I called Caleb's school. I asked to speak to the counselor. Told her I was a neighbor and that I had serious concerns about Renee and Caleb's safety. I told her I had video footage, proof, that Caleb was being abused and forced to commit crimes. The woman on the phone got quiet. Then she said something that sent chills down my spine. "Ma'am, Caleb hasn't been enrolled since February." It was June. I asked her to check again. She came back and confirmed it. Renee had pulled him out of school 4 months ago. No explanation. Just disappeared from the system. I asked if they had an emergency contact or anything. They only had one old number, which was disconnected. That's when I knew Caleb wasn't just being abused. He was being hidden. The next step I took was risky. I went back home. I waited. I knew she'd come back eventually. 2 nights later, she did. And this time I was ready. I stayed in the dark, inside, with my phone ready. She came around the back, like always, but this time I left a trail of footprints, her own. I had poured water near the gate to catch her shoe prints. I'd also placed one of Boomer's old chew toys filled with dye under the gate latch. When she opened it, the toy burst, splattering her hands and jacket in bright blue liquid. I ran outside, flashlight on, screaming. "You're done, Renee. It's over." She turned and tried to run, but I was already dialing 911. She slipped, fell into the shallow end of the drained pool, sprained her ankle trying to crawl out. Police arrived less than 5 minutes later. I showed them everything, the cameras, the photo, the poisoned water bowl, the new video of her climbing the fence. They arrested her right there on my property. But what happened next shocked everyone. When the cops searched her house that night, they didn't just find bleach or gloves this time. They found a locked closet. Inside it, Caleb. Curled up on a mattress on the floor. No lights. No toys. Just a bucket in the corner and a blanket that looked like it hadn't been washed in months. He hadn't been outside in over 2 weeks. He hadn't seen daylight. Hadn't eaten a real meal. The police got him out of there fast. He was crying. Said he didn't want to hurt anyone, but his mom told him if he didn't do what she said, she'd send him to the place Daddy went. No one knows what that means. She never gave a clear answer. But she was arrested for child endangerment, poisoning, trespassing, stalking, harassment, and attempted animal cruelty. The list kept growing. And yet, I still had one more move to make. Renee was in jail, finally, but that didn't mean I could relax. I still jumped every time the wind shook the trees outside. I kept the curtains shut tight, barely slept, and checked my locks 5 times before bed. Even though she was gone, the damage she caused stayed with me. Boomer started eating again. Slowly. He'd lost almost 15 pounds, and the vet said the bleach could still cause long-term problems. I couldn't even look at the pool anymore. I had it drained and covered. Then, 2 weeks after the arrest, I got a call from the county prosecutor. He wanted to meet. Said it was about the case against Renee. I drove to the courthouse, expecting a short meeting. Instead, he laid out everything they'd learned from the investigation. She had a history. 3 different counties. 3 different names. Her real name wasn't even Renee. It was Sharon Hopewell. She had a long list of charges in her past: child neglect, assault, fraud, even attempted arson. Each time, she changed towns. Changed names. Left a mess behind. Her ex-husband, Caleb's father? Presumed dead. He vanished 2 years ago after a custody battle. Cops now believe she may have been involved. And Caleb? He'd never even been properly registered for school in some of the places they lived. She kept him isolated. Manipulated him. Used him. The prosecutor told me the videos I turned in would be central to her case. Especially the one where she dumped bleach in my pool and laughed. Then he looked me in the eye and said something that I'll never forget: "If you hadn't documented everything, if you hadn't fought back, we might not have found that boy alive." But here's where the real revenge came in. I decided I wasn't just going to let this fade away. I went public. I wrote a full, detailed post about what happened. Posted it to local Facebook groups. Uploaded my footage, blurred Caleb's face, but made sure everything else was crystal clear. The story blew up. News stations picked it up. Texas woman stopped child abuser neighbor with home security footage. I did 3 interviews. One went national. People were horrified. Then something amazing happened. A nonprofit group that helps kids in abusive households reached out to me. They asked if I'd speak at a few events. Share what happened. Talk about how important it is to trust your gut, record what you can, and never let someone scare you into silence. I agreed. I never thought I'd become an advocate. But something about turning my fear into fuel, it gave me peace. Renee, Sharon, was found guilty on all counts. The court gave her 25 years without parole. During sentencing, the judge called her a master manipulator and danger to society. She screamed in the courtroom when the verdict came down. Said I ruined her life. I didn't flinch. Caleb was placed in foster care at first, but after all the coverage, a couple who had known his father years ago came forward. They'd lost touch when Renee moved away. They adopted him. I visited him once, months later. He was in a real home. Real backyard. School clothes. Friends. He smiled. For the first time, I saw what he looked like when he wasn't scared. As for me, I kept the house. I had the pool completely torn out. Turned the yard into a garden. Built raised beds and filled them with vegetables and wildflowers. Boomer loves to lay next to the tomato plants now, soaking up the sun. And the best part? Every time I walk through that garden, I remember something. She thought she could scare me into silence. She thought she could poison my peace and walk away. But she didn't know me. She didn't know that I wasn't just going to survive, I was going to burn every single lie she built to the ground. And I did. For Caleb. For Boomer. For myself.